Dear Brian, this is going to be part one of a two-parter where over gameplay, I find it more apt, especially because I have given up trying to find a good, well-lit location to go and have a chat at night. Outside, going for a walk. So, part one is going to be based on a recent idea I had, or just a thought that occurred to me, really, of trying to figure out what kind of gamer am I? And that has come up because I feel that I've got these various epics or ages, if you want to call them that. And they're interesting to me because I feel that the first and second large time they changed, what kind of gamer I am changed. It was arguably external, the influences that cause these changes. However, this most recent one I think is internal, and that's just very interesting to me. But I also feel that, at least for the first two, it makes me one of a very select few. There may still be hundreds of me in this regard, but when you put that against how many gamers there are in the world, that's a very small percentage. Part two is going to be analyzing what kind of person I am and what kind of person I want to be, and how that appears to be affecting my ability to get my goal projects done. Specifically, Project Raider, being that that's what I had determined a while back to be the future of the channel. So, part one. What kind of a gamer am I? Well, I guess we should start by saying that I have plenty of memories of playing some Atari. I don't know what. I think my dad said at one point that he had 4 of them, and they may not have all been the same. I don't think they were. I remember different controllers. Before we got the NES for a Christmas, I don't exactly remember which. I can probably look it up and figure it out, but so that's how far back it goes. And the reason why that's important is just to show the age of that, the length of time that age ended. And the thing is, I can tell you exactly what happened and right about the time. In fact, I can go up and look up the time. It was I would have to go and find the forum post where I signed up, but so let's just say that was late 80s, maybe 90, 91 Christmas. Probably before 91. But it was early 2006 when that changed. So before I detail why and start discussing that age, I guess one of the things that I'm interested in talking about just to see if it kind of matters, just to see if these ages really had an effect. How far did that effect on me as a gamer go? Something that I'm very interested in is looking at what my favorite games were during these ages. So if you look at before early 2006, I would say that there were definitely some obvious favorites. I spent, and they weren't even ones that I necessarily had spent a lot of time on. Sometimes because of the nature of the game, sometimes because it may not have been a game that I actually owned. It may have been one that I had played at a friend's house or had borrowed for a period of time. But this dips into that sort of question that I never really wanted to be asked, only because I just saw it as one of those annoying, pointless questions that children, and sometimes, intending to be thought-provoking, teenager or adult viewers would ask, where that whole "what's your favorite game?" and I stopped having favorites of pretty much anything when I got toward the end of high school, and that's when I realized I was done picking favorite movies, because I realized at that point during my senior year, when oddly enough one of my English teachers asked me what my favorite movie was, that my answer changed every year, and that it was invariably a recent addition. The question came up again when I was in basic training toward the end of 2002, and what do you know? One of the guys that I was having a very open discussion with, it was weird being that it appeared that 30 people in the same large room, there were over 60 in our dorm, but it was split into 2 bays. So over 30 people in a bay were interested in the conversation that just myself and another were having. But he asked me, okay, something along the lines of your Desert Island 10 movies. And I realized, shit. Among the problems of having things like, all the Lord of the Rings, even though the third one's not out, and we were in basic training and unable to see the second when it came out. But anyway, I had realized that a movie that I had just seen the month prior to going into basic training, Road to Perdition, would have made the list. And I definitely don't know, a great movie, but I don't know if it would be anything like top 10 or even Desert Island, which are not the same thing, by the way. So anyway, this dips into that question, but I'll for the sake of this, I think it serves a purpose, so I'll go ahead and try, again, without ever having sat down and tried to put a lot of time into it, the games that influenced me a lot, the games that I have a lot of good memories of. Not all of them are even very good, but Geometry Wars was a very, very recent, to kind of segue, discussion, or game, that I had put time into and had sort of entranced me as a game with that was limited budget and scope, and yet was addicting with a pretty decent feedback loop when it came to growth. If you wanted to get better at Geometry Wars, you just played more. Geometry Wars Retro Evolved, specifically, the live arcade release on the 360. You played and you got better, and the thing is, you got better quickly. So, anyway, Chrono Trigger is, again, no matter what. If someone asked me top 10, top 3, probably top 3, definitely top 5, I would always toss that in there. And being that I don't know another game that I can immediately say that about, it is arguable that you could consider it my favorite, but I just can't do it. I can't make a call on one game, but it's definitely in there. Super Mario World was a definite favorite of mine. I spent a lot of time searching as a kid without the internet, trying to find if there was more. Kids at school were talking about how the highest score you could have on that profile select screen was 100, 101, 102, 106. There were all of these little branching things, and there were these things you have to do, and well, now we know it's 96, and all the weird stuff's been found out, all the mystery's been taken out, but I got to have that experience as a kid of not wondering exactly what it is that I was supposed to do to unlock stages and how many there actually were. So, I don't know. That sort of exploration for secrets is, I think, a reason why Bomberman 64 is a game that I remember spending a lot of time in. I don't know if that makes it a favorite, but it was scratching that itch. And so isn't that what favorites are about, is the game that just, it gets you in a certain way, even if it doesn't satisfy or really execute well a lot of the other things that make a game fun to play. Shadows of the Empire is also very high up there all time for me. There was Mortal Kombat 3. There was even something like Bonanza Brothers, which I did not own. And in fact, I think the only form of it I own right now is on the... Is it on the Switch? Is it on the DS? I don't remember. I don't think I have an original Genesis cartridge. If I don't, I want to pick one up. But, I mean, you introduced that to me at your place when I was very young. Speaking of that, we can go into sports and racing games. And NBA Jam, the first one on the Genesis. Huge favorite of mine. I spent so much time on that. I would go all the way to the end with the Bulls, and then I would start over and do it again. Those codes were fun. Another game that you introduced me to was Baseball 2020. Probably the only good baseball game I've ever played, specifically because of how freaking weird it was and how off it went. And then when it comes to racing, I would say Gran Turismo 3, being that it is, I'm not going to say the only simulation style racing game that I've liked, but it was one that I liked a ton. And Burnout 3 which again, you introduced me to when I made a visit after having played, or I was here. I don't remember why I went back to Wichita, but you showed me Burnout 3, and you showed me those that special mode where your job was, your goal was to inflict the most damage, and you had an after explosion thing that you could set off, and the most fun were the ones where you were driving a bus into a huge ass intersection. That was such a blast. So I went back home, and in fact, that's why I got Xbox Live. It wasn't to play Halo with buddies doing Halo 2. That's something that happened later, but that wasn't why I got Live. I actually initially got Live for the first time on the original Xbox so that you and I could play Burnout 3 together. And we did a couple times. It was good fun. And I think, to round things out, I would say Final Fantasy, the original, was another game that just entranced me. I remember having a particular memory in the first town. I don't remember what it was that made me do it. Maybe it was confusion as a kid in elementary school it might have been middle school when I got it. It wasn't new, but which makes me a little bit even more confused about how I even got it as a gift. It must have been years after release, but I thought that game got picked up pretty well. But anyway, it might have been confusion about what it was I was even looking at on the screen. I don't know. But I went over and I pressed A next to a well, or at a well, and a message came up on the screen saying, "It's just a well. You may think that there's something more to it, but really it's just a well," or something to that effect. And that hooked me, because I thought, wait a minute. You mean there could have been something special? What? There could have been something about this well? There's not, but there could have been? What is this type of game that I'm playing? This is insane. What is this? And I remember having a lot of trouble because it was a new type of game. But I remember having a lot of trouble figuring it out. I started it over multiple times, but I got further every time. I remember as a kid getting at least to the part where the manual, which I still have along with everything else, which games had back then, and which was a mini strategy guide, mentioned a cave in the volcano area where you go and you fight the fire fiend. There is a specific arm of that dungeon that is always, pretty much every step is a fight with multiple ogres. So beware. But it was also a place where if you can handle them, maybe you can level up. And I remember getting at least that far. I thought I remember getting to the point of having the airship as a kid, but I'm not sure. So obviously, throw that on the list. There was also both the first and the second Turtles games. Definitely got to throw them on there. Never beat the first one. My brothers and I kept trying, but man, that game was difficult for kids. And then the second one, the arcade edition, man, if there was a game that we should have bought the multi-tap for, it was that one. But anyway, so I guess that's a pretty decent list, just to get a good snapshot of the sorts of games and game types. So what was it that changed what kind of gamer I was? I mean, up until that point, that was just whatever games interested me. It's just the way it was. So what changed? Well, achievements. It was achievements that changed what kind of gamer I was. So the 360 and the PS3 came out. I mean, I had them all. I had the 360, I had the PS3, I had the Wii. The PS3 and the Wii came out later. And the achievements is what changed things for me, but not right away. I remember playing a lot of those early 360 games, and I was just experiencing, it was the first time I had jumped in right away on a new generation. So the novelty was very new. The fact that it had a hub. You know, all the previous generation did have menus you could go back into, but at the same time it was also very common to just put the game in and it just played. You didn't have to go to a dashboard of any kind to start a game. You had to do something specific to actually make that come up. It wasn't a forced part of it where they could make sure to put ads in front of you. So the novelty of the dashboard was neat. So, but I played King Kong because it was one of the launch titles, and it was very different and interesting. And that just shows that that's actually not something I would have done had I been about the achievements right away, because I wasn't. I did not care. I thought achievements were just a gimmick thing that did not affect gameplay, and arguably they did not and still have not really ever affected gameplay in a meaningful way that couldn't have been accomplished in the game itself, and had been, generations earlier. You do so much of this, you get this, whether it was a title in an RPG game or whatever. So I would not have played King Kong, because King Kong is actually a very easy 1000 to get, or a quick 1000 to get. So, quick and easy. You just play through the game, and it's only a few hours. So, but the next, I think March, because it launched in November 2005. I think March. I had played Geometry Wars before that, so that's why I got to just barely break it. But the Gamerscore League, on a website that I have long broken away from, changed how I looked at games. Games now became all about how easy were they to get the achievements in, how quickly. So I was in season 2, I think it was, and I just signed up and went into the, just ungrouped, and so they threw people together in groups of 6, I think it was, and we all had contact information and stuff, And one of them in my group of 6 was one of the admins on the site. And so I thought, oh yeah, we got this good. No, we didn't. I was the only one who was even playing like I was in a league. Everybody else, it's like they sign up and then just thought, oh, I guess, they'll just check at the end and whatever. I'm not going to play any different. At that time, I had started working from GameStop, so I was picking up used games, returning them, or checking out games to try to get more and more points in. And I wasn't terribly efficient about it because I was basically going solo. I remember sending messages out to people, to my teammates, saying, hey, you guys know that we're in a league, right? I ended up getting half our team's points as one of 6. And I think one of the other 5 didn't have any points. I could go look. That information is still up there. But anyway, so it was frustrating. So I didn't really pay attention to the Gamerscore League for a while, but I was paying attention to Gamerscore, since that was the only new generation system out for an entire year, and I didn't really have any games that were keeping me tied to the PS2. I was still playing the GameCube here and there. I remember Batten Kaitos being a game that I played a good deal. I don't know if it was specifically after the 360, but just as an example. If not, then chuck that in with a game that stood out to me and that I very much enjoyed before this turn. So that year was really kind of all about trying to get achievements. And it must have been more than a year. But that's what it was all about. The PS3 came out, I bought it. The Wii came out, I bought it. And I definitely played both of them, but not really much. I just kept expanding my library on the 360 and enjoying all of that gamer score that I was racking up. I was a very regular member of the website. And I just kept playing all the games and getting all the achievement points I could. But I knew that the Gamerscore League was a thing, so it had already skewed, achievements had already skewed what I was playing, because now I wasn't caring about the other systems as much, because I felt like the time that I was spending on these other systems were time that I wasn't getting achievements. And achievements, well, that was a measure of the amount of time and effort that you had put into games. In a way, it was sort of a measure of how much gamer you are. And so I just kept playing those games. But I knew that if I was going to do the Gamerscore League again, and I did want to, that I needed to stop playing the easy ones. And so it went from me trying to get all the achievements I could out of games to me trying to get as little achievements out of games as possible. And so I would actually leave games that I very much wanted to play in the shrink wrap, because I thought, nope, that's too easy, it's too quick, at least compared to other things I could play right now. Not going to play it, even if it was something I was very interested in playing. And that was, it didn't matter that it was a different way that I was not playing the game. It was just, this is how achievements were affecting me. So I still have games on my 360 bookshelf that I have not played to this day, that I didn't, because either for a time the achievements weren't easy enough, Or for another time, the achievements were too easy and I wanted to save them for a league. So then the league came that I went ahead and jumped in on. I had skipped a lot of the easy ones enough to the point where I had a pretty good amount of them stacked up. A lot of them were games I wouldn't have played anyway, but I decided to jump in on season 7. I went and talked. I sent a message to someone that seemed very serious about it and had previous success, and so I let them know what I was up for. And even the preseason was a big drama thing. They kept changing the rules on who could play and who could be on teams together, specifically as a response to pretty much everything that he was doing, because they didn't like him. I mean, it really was that simple. This is, it doesn't matter that the site is still around and has limited professional clout. They're around because of traffic, because they had the most traffic out of what they did, and now they're pretty much the only ones left doing it, because I think the gaming community as a whole did eventually move past the novelty of achievements and trophies, because it did sort of latch on to people for a while, but a lot of people that used to care about that sort of stuff just don't anymore. So anyway, I had a lot of stuff saved up, and again, a lot of easy sports games, a lot of kids games I never would have played anyway had come out and were available to easily knock the crap out of. So I remember I very, very, very much liked the format of how the season was done as far as time, though. So, if I were to ever start or participate in another league like that, I would want it to be the same. But the way it was done was from noon Wednesday to noon Sunday was, well, let me back up, 6-person teams. Only 4 of the 6 members were counted to be active on any given week, and you had to say who they were before the week started. The week would begin noon Wednesday and end on noon Sunday. So it was a 4-day race with a 3-day break. And then again, the rotation would shift. It lasted for 6 weeks. So the way the numbers worked out, I think it was either 2 members were only going to be able to be in for 4 of the weeks, or only 2 members could go for 5 of the weeks. I don't remember which it was, but the rules were as such where you couldn't have someone in there every week. You had to keep rotating them around. So I don't remember, but it was something like that. I only got to play I think it was 4 of the weeks. So no, I'm sorry, I'm remembering the numbers wrong, which are not important to this, but whatever. So it was 2 months of this, so it was 8 weeks total. So some members of the team, I think 4 of them got to do 6, and 2 of them only got to do 4. I think that's how the numbers worked out. I was one of the members that got to do, or 5, whatever. Anyway, I got to do 6 weeks. I remember that because I remember at the end counting everything up as if I had basically played for 24 days. And in those 24 days, I was, I think, far and away the MVP of the league in 24 days. And this is going to sound like nothing today, because if someone wants to start a brand new account, they could knock this out in probably a day. But I had just crossed the line and broke 50,000 gamer score. So there were games that I had not played before because of the easy achievements that I finally got to play, but I didn't get to enjoy them either. And that was one of the problems with these easy gamer score games. I wouldn't play them forever. And then on this league, this one, because there was no other one that I joined, I played and just sped through it the instant a game was done. I didn't even watch an ending cutscene if I even played to the ending, because some games had a thing where it was easy for a while, but then it would pick up, and so you weren't supposed to play the last ones. So there are plenty of games out there where I've got 600 gamer score and that's it. It's just sitting there at that number, and it's not going to be finished unless I go back and do it. So wouldn't even see the ending cutscene. Take that disc out, put the next one in, keep racing. So it was it was a blast, but again, it just caused a problem when it came to what kind of gamer am I. So a lot of those games that I had saved up because they were easy, they were games I wanted to play, but they were easy, so I was saving them for a competition. I never got to them. They didn't make the cut. They weren't quite easy enough, so they didn't make the cut, and I never played them. I didn't play them during the league. So one or two maybe I decided afterward were worth, it was okay to open them up and play. But there were also, I didn't immediately decide that I wasn't going to do another league anytime soon. So there were a lot of them that I still didn't play, and that's why a lot of those are still unopened today. So achievements changed things for me. And even after I left the site, it's possible that there was a sort of in-between period where I may have reverted a bit to how I was when I was young, and I just played games that interested me. Because I remember, for example, one of the games that came out during this lull in between was Destiny. And that game, that play was definitely not driven by achievements, especially since frustration with it, I don't know, the third time I quit it drove me to Diablo 3, which was not on the console, at least not how I played it. That may very well have been a bit of a reversion, a period of time where I was not being driven by achievements, but it wasn't quite the next step yet, which definitely affected how I played. So what's weird is that if I think about all of the games during that time frame where I was either, for a short amount of time, I was driven to play games because of how easy the gamer score was, or I refused to play games because of how easy they were and I wanted to save them. and sometimes that drove my play onto other systems. But I'm thinking through them now. I don't know if there is a single game that I could list during this achievement period that was a special or memorable one for me that was not an RPG. And I think that that's absolutely telling something. Now, I've always loved RPGs. Several of them made my list. But isn't that telling that the games... Oh, I forgot. In the pre-period, definitely. Dragon Quest VIII. I don't know how I forgot that, but there it is. But there were a lot of 360 era and PS3 era RPGs that really appealed to me. And since those were not at all quick achievements, I just did those. So I remember games like Final Fantasy XIII, like Enchanted Arms, like Infinite Undiscovery, Oblivion, definitely, Skyrim, also. I was just thinking of another one. What was it? Cross Edge on the PS3. I mean, there were probably, those, all of those, I spent a lot of time into. I love those games. There is only one other game. One. Wait, no. I'm starting to think of my 360 case, and I'm starting to, no? Oh, okay. Are we having a bit of a revelation now where I thought I had something figured out, and now here we are again? So, let's start to go through this. The first one I thought of was Split Second. I played Split Second for the first time at PAX 2009, back when there was only one PAX, so it was PAX, and I just kept going back and playing that demo. I was actually there because I was working for the website at the time. I'm unpaid, but I was there to help, and I did some, one of the admins and I took a lot of pictures and did an interview with a guy for, was it Project Gotham Racing 2? I don't remember, but we got to, we even recorded the damn thing. One of us was taking pictures, the other one was manning the camera while I was asking questions. It was pretty much me doing the interview. And it was probably 45 minutes of showing us that game before other people were able to see anything more than a trailer. But I remember I spent a lot of time going back and playing the demo for Split Second. And when the game came out, it absolutely delivered on everything that I was hoping and expecting out of the full game. I ended up streaming it later on, and I want to go back and finish it. I didn't actually quite finish it. There are some difficult 3-star stages later on, and you got to do those to unlock the other ones and so on. So I want to go back and finish it. And I think the studio that made it has been dissolved, which is unfortunate because I would love to talk to the developers and see if I can't spark either a sequel or, since I'm pretty sure the license is held by Disney, a spiritual successor at least. But anyway, Condemned. Now, Condemned might not actually be an exception during this period. It was a launch title, and I remember going through a lot of the launch titles. That is a loud bug. I remember going through a lot of the launch titles before the first Gamerscore League. So, which was the second one, but the first one I played in. So, it's possible that Condemned was actually part of the pre-window. If so, absolutely add that in to the memorable games. It's memorable wherever it falls. But Condemned Criminal Origins was an amazing game. Second one suffered because they added multiplayer. BioShock came out during that time. Amazing. So definitely a favorite that came out during that achievement time when I still cared about all that stuff. That's probably it.
Can I talk?
I'm thinking about my shelf. That really is probably it for non-RPGs, and that's what, 2, maybe 3? So I remember playing a lot of Gears, but that's just because I was playing it with other members of the site. I never actually liked Gears. It was, wasn't something that made me want to switch the system off, but I didn't really enjoy it. There were some other arcade titles that I ended up getting into, but I do think, even though I felt like, oh wait, there's more. No, after thinking it through, I mean, I'm out for a walk at night. I'm not standing in front of my 360 bookshelf, but, well, it's a game shelf, isn't it? My time may very well have been much, much more heavily put into RPGs during this period. And that may have been because of being turned away from other games because of achievements. I remember there was a game, and I haven't mentioned this yet. There were some games I did not play because for a large percentage of the time that I was someone who cared about achievements, and some of the games that I've listed so far, you might think, well, what? How is this true when you also played those? A lot of the games that I played had very difficult ones, or at least ones that took forever. Infinite Undiscovery is one that you could argue has both, and multiples. But anyway, for a very large percentage of the time that I was caring about achievements, not only would I not play easy games because I wanted to save them for leagues, but I would not play difficult games if there was a hint or a whiff that it was going to take a long time to complete. Because, and this might make sense for someone that was an RPG lover, I was a completionist for a lot of this period too. So I remember there being a game, and it must have fallen into that category. I can't remember specifically one way or the other, but I bought, it's just an example of one that I know is still in the shrink wrap, the collector's edition for Turning Point Fall of Liberty, a game that did not do well. I didn't play it because achievements, it was going to take me too long to get them all, and I was never in the mood to do that. There were other RPGs, honestly, that I'm pretty sure are still shelved that I regretted starting. I remember hating that my youngest brother, way back when he was still just a kid, and I brought my system and a bunch of games home, and he threw Fear, the first one, into the system, and he played through it. And to this day, I think that's the only achievement on my account. The 5-point achievement you get for seeing the girl. 5 points out of over 100,000. There are some loud fucking bugs. that I did not earn. But I hated that he put that in on there because I thought, oh crap, I know I bought it. I know I bought it to play it, but I'm not in the mood right now. I don't want to play it right now. So that 5 point is also still the only 5 points that I have on there. I should probably go play it. That one wasn't even a bad one. But anyway, there were games I did not play because of that completionist thing. Like I just explained with Fear, sometimes it may not have even been a hard or a difficult thing. I just didn't want to start a game that I didn't plan on finishing 100% because of that completionist streak as well. So there were definitely games that I did not play for that reason. So that's insane. So many games I did not play during that time frame. Years. And that just sucks, doesn't it? So yes, looking at that stash of games against the stash of games I was talking about before, I would definitely say, how did I forget Donkey Kong Country? But anyway, definitely a change. So the kind of gamer I was affected the games that I remember and cherish during those times. So there was a lull between leaving the website and not caring about achievements anymore and the next change. And that next change was streaming. So what games I played, and this is something that I've definitely talked about with my streamer buddies and viewers probably enough about, so much so that I'm not really going to go into it too much here, but I basically made it to where my game decisions were based around what was going to grow the channel without making certain concessions. I did not play PvP. Or if I did, it was very sparingly, but just wasn't for me, so I wasn't going to do it. I didn't pander with a lot of that multiplayer stuff. I knew it was what was easy to build a community around, because multiplayer is usually what gives a game legs, and only ones that have some sort of subscription or come out with regular DLC, those are pretty much the only ones that can be exceptions. So things like Destiny and Diablo and Warcraft and stuff like that, they can keep people around without it being PvP because they just keep drip feeding content. But other than that, it's PvP. So if I had wanted to play, or if I had wanted to build up a community of a bunch of returning viewers, I could have picked one of those games, but that just wasn't me. So to a certain degree, no, I did not play games that I was not interested in. However, this was another example of where I felt the games that I played were restricted by what was a good viewing game, a good viewing experience. I am not streaming Persona right now. I mean, I could easily I've got a second channel now. I can just flip on the stream, sit back, play it, and then just chat with anybody that's in there. But it's just not one of those good viewing experience games, and so I kind of don't want to push my regulars that are still thankfully around away by something like that. So there were Persona definitely worked for a while, but I don't know that it would have worked long term, especially the way I play it, where I will spend hours and hours grinding in RPGs. That's just not fun to view. Doesn't matter how much you like a combat system. Even I get to the point where it's just like, okay, I'm just going to go until I get to this level. And that's as the player. Viewing is less fun. That's just a fact, especially when it comes to RPGs. So, but, you know, I've talked about it at length before. It's just not that great to you know, my viewers kept telling me, well, play what you want. And I get what they meant. But unfortunately, there was a conflict because there were the games that I wanted to play. That's true. But the issue was that there were, what I wanted was for the channel to grow. Now, sometimes this led to playing certain games longer than I had intended. Horizon Zero Dawn was kind of an example of that, and one that honestly I feel if I had went back, I actually probably should have played it for longer and handled differently. When I completed that legendary playthrough, I should have just immediately started back over, used a different save file if I felt like it, or a save slot, but I should have just started back over because you know, that viewership, there was a lot of foreign viewers who just wanted me to, you know, they kept telling me to skip the story and stuff. I should have immediately started over and started another legendary playthrough and just done all action and just kept that viewership up. You know, who knows if that would have been really good for the channel going forward. Ghost Recon was another game that did very well for the channel, and I was exceptionally happy by that. So there were games that were, I mean, those were great games. They really were. And I would have played them anyway, probably. I don't know if I would have played them the same, but I think I even played both of them differently because I was trying to cater to the fact that I was playing for an audience. So there are definitely games on my shelf right now, my various game shelves, that I did not play because they weren't good streaming games. And some I've kind of went back to and started to pick up. Some I haven't. But I have only recently, relatively, got out of that. So the games that I remember fondly during this time, I can remember games like Persona and Dragon Quest fondly, even though I did not play those extensively on stream. I know that there were a good number of streams of Dragon Quest, but in reality, and even before I picked up S on the Switch and played that, I didn't actually put the majority of my playtime of the first playthrough on the stream. I just did a lot of it off. So that was definitely affected by it. But I mean, you still got those two great games. But a lot of the games that I remember fondly during this time are ones that had to do with the streaming. So Horizon and Ghost Recon are going to be that 1-2 punch that I always look back to as sort of the heyday. But you know, I don't know how much of how I think of those games is skewed by how well they performed as a crowd pleaser. Destiny's always going to be that hate-love-hate relationship thing. Destiny 2 as well. So I honestly, I don't know if I can consider it a yes, I care about it, or I'm not going to label it as a favorite. I can't. I can't label either of them or them together as a favorite. I can't. So I guess there's that. But that also that was heavily affected by streaming. And honestly, the people who are successfully feeding off the Bungie tit, continuing to push that game, it doesn't matter that it's got aspects of it that are better than it used to be. Again, there were things that were not Activision's fault at all, that Bungie was fully responsible for, and guess what? They're still the ones in charge, and there are a number of things that they could do to the game and could make sure is solid about Destiny 3, and I haven't heard. That's a very at-length discussion. But anyway, though I will say this. If Destiny 3 is on a brand new engine, and they just continue to try to spread that Destiny 2 butter real thin, so that they have the time to sit back and develop a good solid engine, I will give Destiny 3 a shot. I'm saying that now. But anyway, I can't even give a solid list of favorites during this time period. And that's a little weird. So, definitely, here we are again, getting a sort of verification that the kind of gamer I was at different points affected the games that I ended up cherishing during those times, or considering favorites. So, yeah, I hadn't really thought about this topic too much. I was going to kind of talk through it with you here. But, yeah, I guess it did. So, those were what I would argue the two big sort of outside influences on what came to be the, what was defining me as a, or what I had deemed as what mattered to me as a gamer. And I call them outside influences because even though it was me choosing what mattered to me, they weren't things that I made up. So I did not make up achievements, nor did I make up video game streaming or let's plays or whatever, which I thought was fucking dumb, by the way, for years. So that why are you gonna spend your time watching people? Just play the game yourself. That watching people play video games, as someone who had 3 brothers growing up, is the worst aspect of video games. Why the hell is that shit popular right now? Oh, because people can do this at school, at work. They can watch while they can't play. All right, now that makes sense. Okay, so I didn't get that for fucking years. So let's playing and streaming was just dumb. So, but anyway, I did not invent streaming. And so how it affects what you do and what you play was just something that I'm considering an outside influence. So I talked about it earlier, but what's this newfangled? Not newfangled. I hate that. I'm erasing that. What is the new change that is my fault, that I feel is internal, that I mentioned earlier? Well, that is the fact that I feel my ever-growing interest in game design has overtaken my desire to play games for the most part. And so that is affecting what games I play now. It kind of bled into the streaming a little bit, where I was just hating certain games and stopped playing them because of that. Destiny was another example, of course. But, you know, playing PvE Destiny, especially the first one, just running around and doing patrols all the time, which was my favorite solo and group activity, believe it or not, in the first Destiny. That's just not good streaming material. So thinking about game design and discussing game design was something that I wanted to do with streaming in the first place. Didn't end up taking off that way, but you know, it was definitely there. But right now, you know, I can be short-term addicted to games, but in reality, what I fantasize about the most when I'm at work and otherwise unable to do either, again, outside of certain addictions, which are fleeting, is actually discussing and writing about it more than playing games. And that is very new and odd, and something that I am still very much subject to these days. And I have no clue when or if games will take back over. Even recently, when I found myself within a period of time where there were a bunch of games, coming out at the same time that I was seriously interested in playing, I just keep wanting to write about them. I keep wanting to get the first chunk of Project Raider out there so I can start on the second chunk. And so that's, I guess we'll have to do the time will tell on, you know, what games I cherished during this time and see what that looks like. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see. So anyway, I miss you, buddy, but I'll be back soon. Hopefully I can quickly find some nonsense footage somewhere to throw this over, or maybe I'll just record some Persona. Man, I don't know what I'm doing, but if I just talked about how Persona is not a good viewing thing and then I just throw this over a whole bunch of that, that'll be funny after the fact. But maybe I'll just record some Persona this weekend and throw this over that. But I do want to have part 2 soon. I want to, here I am, want to talk about Project Raider more. And again, the whole point of part 2 is, well, what kind of person am I and what kind of person do I want to be? And how will, and this is short term, this is sort of a self-evaluation that I'm doing, that I'm going to be doing in this form to try to figure out where, you know, just a little quick check on where I'm at in life. And do I need to reprioritize things? Do I need to cut some things out? So I guess we'll see. Because again, I'm not really thinking too hard about it right now. I will think about it at length, like this, on a microphone, over some gameplay. So, anyway. Miss you, buddy. But I will, I'll chat with you again soon.